If we look at the Catholic intellectual tradition, we have to look at two principles that have informed that tradition with regard to other religious traditions. And one principle is that of the universal salvific will of God. So God wants everyone to be saved. A fundamental principle of Christian faith is that you have to be baptized for salvation. However, in the course of history, what we see is that the Catholic intellectual tradition has developed various ways in which people who have not been given the opportunity to be baptized might still have access to salvation. So one principle that was developed in the course of history was the idea of the baptism of desire. So people who did not have access to actual baptism could be baptized or could be saved through the desire for baptism. So that's one way in which the Catholic intellectual tradition has recognized the possibility of salvation of non-Christians. Another principle is the principle of invincible ignorance that was developed by Thomas Aquinas, namely that people who through no fault of their own had not had access to the truth of the gospel could still be saved. That principle was then confirmed or officially explicitated in the 19th century by Pius IX. But it's really only at Vatican II that the Church has said anything formal or official about non-Christian religions, and in particular in the document Nostra Aetate, which is one of the smallest documents of Vatican II, paragraph 2 reads that the Catholic Church rejects nothing of what is true and holy in these religions. She has a high regard for the manner of life and conduct, the precepts and doctrines which, although differing in many ways from her own teaching, nevertheless often reflect a ray of that truth which enlightens all men. So this short text really establishes the basis for openness to other religions and to constructive engagement with other religious traditions. So that has led, after Vatican II, to a flood of interest in other religious traditions and to the development of various types of interreligious dialogue. Vatican documents talk about the 4 types of dialogue: the dialogue of daily life, the dialogue of social action, the dialogue of theological reflection, and the dialogue of spiritual experiences. You can add to that also the more formal dialogue between leaders of different religious traditions, but those are the types of ways in which the Church has engaged in dialogue with other religious traditions. The type of dialogue that I am mostly involved with and that we are mostly involved with at Boston College is, of course, a theological dialogue. We have an area that's called comparative theology, where we engage in Catholic theological reflection in dialogue with one or the other religion. So this is really systematic theology, but done in the form of interreligious dialogue. We also teach courses, core courses for students that they can elect to take. And there we also teach Christian theology, but in dialogue with one or the other tradition. And students usually take this course because they think they know everything about Christianity or because they are not interested in Christianity. And these courses are really a fantastic way for students to rediscover their tradition or to discover the Christian tradition in a new way through seeing it in light of another religious tradition. This way of studying Christianity really allows students to discover its depth and its richness, sometimes by contrast with other religious traditions, but sometimes also seeing the similarities with other religious traditions or the ways in which other religions can learn from Christianity and vice versa, Christianity can learn from other religious traditions. So the area of comparative theology is one that's really incredibly diverse and rich and developing right now, and that is bringing the Catholic intellectual tradition or bringing something genuinely new and enriching to the Catholic intellectual tradition. It still remains to be seen how all of this is going to be integrated and absorbed within classical theology, but it's certainly a very new, creative and interesting way in which the Catholic intellectual tradition can be enriched by interreligious dialogue.